Well, welcome to another episode of Rimshots of Sean, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk. I've got some gentlemen here via my friend Jamie Roberts. I have Mark. I have John. The band. You're gonna love this name, Mile Marker Zero. Are you guys officially out of Connecticut, or you both live there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right on. So tell me a little bit. John, we'll start with you. Mile Marker Zero. Tell us a little bit about the band.
Well, we've been together over 15 years, something like that.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, we put out three full-length records. Our new one is coming out soon. We're somewhere we call ourselves like a progressive hard rock band where there's elements of progressive rock, but we also, write a lot of straight ahead songs as well. And we've had the good fortune to play and open for a bunch of incredible bands such as Porcupine Tree. Mark, jump in. Who else have we played for?
Let's see, Periphery,
Referee, yeah.
Spock's Beard. Let's see what else. Thank You, Scientist, and then also outside of Prague, we did the Misfits, which was interesting. Under Oath, Devil
Yeah.
Wears Prada, some other along the. And Scale the Summit too. That would be another Prague band that we got to share the stage with.
So
Yeah.
that's cool.
Oh, and Adrenaline Mob. That was cool too.
Oh, nice one, nice one. Was that with Portnoy or with the AJ Pero?
That
Yeah.
was their first. I think it was the first gig of that tour because it was in New Haven.
Wow, nice. And I say I'll say this. I've had the opportunity as a musician to open for a lot of bands, open for a lot of big bands in Canada. You guys probably would have known them, but one of the things that I think is valuable for anybody that's a musician in opening is actually to find out how things work, right? Where a lot of people don't understand, you don't get as much stage, you might not get as much lights, you might not get any monitors, any sound check. Maybe John, talk about that a little bit because I've been in some situations where I've got everything. I've been in situations where it's four guys, five guys playing in a phone booth. So just discuss that a little bit.
Oh yeah. Well, it's always an adventure when you're opening for another band and exactly what you said, which is like, are you going to get how much room are you going to get? How much are you going to be able to hear yourself? So sometimes it depends on how cool the band is. If they let you, sort of do a regular sound check and stuff like that, or if you're pressed for time, you're going up there. So luckily with almost actually every single band that we'd mentioned, they'd been very cool. We got good sound checks. Usually not a lot of room on stage. We're not a band that runs around and does a ton of stage pyrotechnics and things like that. But speaking of, so this is one of those things where we, as long as we can hear each other halfway decently, we can put on a great show. And that's the most important part to us. And opening for other bands, you get to sort of see how they operate as a band, how they operate during sound check, how complicated is their setup, so we tried to keep things for a long time as simple as possible. Our music is not the easiest music to play, and we really need to be able to hear each other. So as time has gone on, we've sort of added thing to our setup, and we're for the next record, and when we start playing and touring, that's going to be yet another evolution. So hopefully we get some time to get set up for a great show.
Well, and to your point, anybody that has an opportunity to open for bigger bands like that really should be taking notes. And I mean, I learned very early on not to be a fanboy, right? Like, don't get in the way, don't ask for autographs,
Yeah.
or things like that. But you should be, to your point, looking how gear is set up, look at the interaction between the bandmates, during sound check, between the techs and the lighting, and these are all things people wouldn't get. But it's really fun to see a cohesive unit when they're kind of moving and doing their thing and treating an opener great. Um, so, Mark, John was just talking about your music is not the easiest to play. I'm going to ask you what I call my blabbermouth.net question, and I think originated a couple years ago with the one and only Mr. Eddie Trunk, but that would be backing tracks. Is that something that you guys use when you play live?
Oh, that's a hot button issue, especially in that world.
Well, can I give you my 2 cents on it first?
Sure, go for it.
You're in friendly territory with that because I've always been of the mindset that backing tracks are a skill set that not everybody can do. I'm a drummer that I play with a click track all night long, and tracks when sometimes. So if you have an opportunity to use technology to not necessarily replace but enhance, I don't think there's any shame in that. So, having said that, you go ahead and tell me your 2 cents.
No, I think you hit it right on the head. There, sometimes people overlook, they kind of take two hard sides of it. When if it's replacing things, and especially if you're using it to fake something, that's a different story. But when you're enhancing the music, you're absolutely right, and that I think gets overlooked. There is a skill set to that. There's a skill set to playing with a click, recording the parts and having it be there. And some of, there are great musicians who do that. Have to play to a click track because they're using video or there's some kind of synchronization going on. I mean, at my core, I love it to be as live as possible, but especially as a keyboard player, like I get it, like if it's there to enhance it and help fill out that sound, it really, like you said, why ignore technology when it can be there to enhance and bring something new that maybe necessarily wasn't possible in the past. When you're getting into the realm of replacing an enormous part of it, or like we said, like faking, that's a different story.
Yeah, and it's presented sometimes like it's dishonorable to do it, and I think that's ridiculous. I mean, it started a couple years ago. I don't know if you saw the clip, but there was a band that I think they were called San Andreas. They were playing the Whiskey a Go Go in it, and things went sideways, and their entire show was on tracks, right?
Mm.
And he picks up on that, and then he uses it to kind of take a couple shots of Paul Stanley here and there. Next thing you know, every second thing on blabbermouth.net is, it could be a really nice, like we're going to have a discussion about your music, and they totally ignore that. And the headline is blah, blah, blah. It says backing track suck or whatever. And it's too bad that it's come to that because the audience now wants to hear things a certain way. They don't want people up there fumbling through stuff. If they're paying big money, and John,
Right.
I'll get you to weigh in here. If they're paying big money for a show, you got to give them a show, and I think that that's just an enhancement that maybe they deserve sometimes.
Right. I mean, and I think, of course, no offense to Eddie Trunk, we love Eddie Trunk, but
Yes, we do.
very bad shows back in the day, very inconsistent, bad. You might say, well, that's why that's part of the gamble. Shows were also much cheaper back in the day too, and so you could go to 2 or 3 shows for the price of one, like you would now. So I think you have to sort of. I'm always about balance, and weighing out the pros and the cons, and it's like I'm totally in line with Mark about if you're replacing stuff, if you're faking a guitar part or something, I really, then it's not music, it's just performance art, and that's not my bag. But when you get to the point where it's if it's an enhancement and you want the showgoer to have the experience like they're having the record, but maybe you layered a bunch of things that you don't have the musicians on stage for. You have to use good judgment, I think.
I love that line, music versus performance art, because I don't know that I've ever heard it explained that way before, and I think it hits the nail right on the head. So anyway, we've done our part about that. I've tried to get you on blabbermouth.net. We'll see what happens. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Can I add one thing to that? And
Absolutely.
there's the one exception, and actually this came up in the last couple of years, especially post-COVID, where I know this happened to a band that we're big fans of, Between the Buried and Me, where they were on tour and their bass player got really, really sick and he couldn't play. So they could have either canceled the tour. They aren't able to hire somebody to learn all that music that quickly. So he sat in his hotel. It's way too complicated. There's a whole financial part of it too that gets overlooked, kind of like in the skill set that you're talking about. So I mean that pops up sometimes too. And if people can do it and make sure the show gets done, that's another, albeit different situation. But
well, I'll tell you what, gentlemen. Rule number 1 in Canada is you never cancel a show for a bass player. So anyway, I jest. But so explain, John, over to you, and then Mark, if you want to weigh in, explain, I guess, to my viewers what your band sounds like. I mean, your influences, what you're going for. You mentioned you have 3 full-length albums, a 4th one coming out. You've been around 15 years, so I mean, you guys you're not newbies, right? We call you veterans. You've been at it a while.
Yeah.
Explain to my viewers what they would expect out of you guys.
Sure. Well, let's take it to some of the formative influences and then sort of how we've changed. We were definitely, when we first started and wanted to be a progressive rock band in the vein of some combo, maybe you could say, of Rush and Dream Theater and Yes, and some of the more modern bands as well. And so we all, but the thing is that we've always sort of had a hard rock side too. A little, like Muse would be a good example. Coheed and Cambria, who sort of is in that line where they're also pop oriented, but they have a lot of extended playing things and a little bit more on the progressive side. So we've always sort of straddled that line between the two because we love rock and pop music, and we all have a very diverse range of influences. They kind of coalesce together on on the progressive artists. So that's where we sort of are able to write together. But this record also brings in, the new one is bringing some other influences in during that we've been really paying attention to in the last few years, like getting back into Peter Gabriel's catalog and just the artistry and the grooves and all those things, and we started thinking that it would be a perfect complement and something that other bands are not in our sort of progressive rock, progressive metal world. They don't really do a lot, and we have a huge connection to that. So we started adding some stuff into in that sort of vein. So it's hard to describe in one sentence because there's a melding, but that's the long and short of it. Maybe Mark can do a better job.
No, excuse me. No, I think you really hit it on the head. We had this, since we started, we had two sides of us. We had, the progressive rock side, and we also had that hard rock side. I grew up on classic rock and hard rock, and John and I had a lot of favorite bands. We were both big Van Halen fans, and we both love love the Allman Brothers and things like that. So, but then as we started playing together, it was like, okay, how do we want to balance? And I think it took us a little while to find how to balance that. And I think now, especially with these last couple albums, and really with this one, we've really found how can we coalesce, or bring that together into a cohesive sound, where it's progressive in nature. But I mean, for us, song is always first. I know that's like a cliche thing to say, but that really is, that is very important to us. And then once you have that, you can always expand from there and experiment. And John mentioned Peter Gabriel, and Peter Gabriel has brilliant melodies and a core there, coming from his time in Genesis, and then they're able to, he's able to go off of that once that core is solidified.
Well, and a number of months here in Halifax, the guitar player that I play with is actually a promoter, and he brought this. It was a tribute to, I want to say, the second Peter Gabriel album. They did it in its entirety, and I was just like, "Whoa!" I mean, I had, not Peter Gabriel, Genesis with Peter Gabriel, but I was just okay. I knew what they brought in terms of progressive stuff, but then when they kind of turned it around and did some other things, it was really neat. And the one thing I find in music now is you don't really get that a whole lot anymore. Like, you're either super progressive or you're poppy, but there's this kind of middle ground that maybe is missing the last couple of years. Would you say that's a fair statement?
I can see that. I mean, when we were, we were talking about Rush before. When we were doing the Fifth Row, like, I remember we were talking about, well, what are we going to use for a template? And I know we all sat down and we looked at permanent waves. I'm in the middle of reading Geddy Lee's book at the moment, and they talk about that change, when they went into that era, and they were able to find a way to meld those two worlds together perfectly. And I would agree. I do think there is I wish there was a little bit more of that, where it's the good songs that are augmented by experimental, and reaching for something a little bit higher. But yeah, I know what you're saying. It's either kind of one or the other, and sometimes the both sides are afraid to meet in the middle.
Yeah, it's almost either too commercial or not commercial enough, so they just don't bother other way, and it's a shame. And I mean, there's some bands that hit it. There's no question, but it just seems like the last, I don't know, 5, maybe 6 years, there's just a gap there that could be filled. But who knows? Maybe it's you guys, right? Maybe it's just something you guys have coming out, right?
Yeah, great. Yeah.
So here's what we're going to do, gentlemen. We're going to take a quick little break. We got to pay some bills because we're, we got to keep the lights on here at Rimshots with Sean. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to Rimshots with Sean. I am here with Mark. I am here with John. Mile marker. Where did this name come from? I see a number of things in my head when I hear the name. Where did the name come from?
So the name came from when Dave and I went to high school together. John and I met in college, and so we started playing together. And we had some sort of, when we were first coming up with names for the band earlier on, we were trying to find something that could represent the beginning or the end of a journey, and we kind of came up with that. Now, being said, every once in a while when we would have first started out and playing, bar gigs and stuff, people would wonder if we were, playing Jimmy Buffett music or, that kind of stuff. That has come up a few times. But that's kind of where it originated from. I think I was thinking of the Fish song Character Zero, and that kind of led us to that. And then that came and we were like, oh, that could mean the beginning or the end, and that kind of, that cyclical thing. So that's where it came from.
I heard it when Jamie sent it to me the first time. I kind of, in my mind, formed me a little bit of a Mad Max kind of thing from it. I thought that, I mean, it's cool, like, because names are they could be anything from asinine to really mean something, and all points in between. But I just thought it was super catchy. So good on that. So in terms of this record, how long ago did you guys start putting it together?
This was so our last album, The Fifth Row, came out 5 years ago.
Okay.
And
So pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, and we had started playing some festivals, and things started ramping up for us. We got in the NASCAR Heat 4 video game, and we got a track in there, and like it was cool things were happening. And then, like everyone else, the pandemic comes. We were thinking about writing the next record, and then all of a sudden everything shut down and we can't get together.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and the way that we'd always worked before was at least a few of us in a room working on, if not the whole band, jamming out and working on things and making little mini demos and things like this. But we didn't really have that choice for quite a while. And even once we could kind of do it again, it was like, ooh, how is this going to work? So pretty much about a month into lockdowns in 2020, it was like, okay, so let's use this time for good. And even if we can't get together, let's at least start generating ideas. And so individually, we start putting together these demos at various stages. And this is throughout the entire pandemic for 2 years or so. We were working, I guess it's a very modern way, sending files to each other, sending snippets of parts, sending lyrical ideas, sending melodies, things back and forth. What do you think of this? What do you think of this? And then everyone's sort of adding their 2 cents in. And that's how really the bulk of the record was made, which is different for us. And we were worried that it was going to be in the end, too impersonal. Except by the time we got most of the way through it, we realized this was like the most personal record we had ever made, and maybe only be able to be that personal because we were isolated as we started writing this. So that's sort of the overall top-down view of how, when we started writing it and how it came to be.
And I think so. I mean, you could say it's a COVID record. I mean, you hate the term, but I mean, a COVID project.
Yeah.
This podcast was just that. It was, hey, I can't do anything. What am I going to do? I can't play like you guys.
Yeah.
I'm looking down the gun sites at what I thought was maybe 5 or 6 weeks of missed gigs. So I'll just do something to bide my time. Here I am 4 years later. And so similar thing. So I love that. One of the themes was, and I'm guessing you guys are going to agree with me on this, but for me, one of the themes was, if you're sitting around moping, the world's going to pass you by during this time. But if you're using technology and you're embracing some things and you're using this time to work, when you come out the other side, you're going to be further ahead. Did you guys look at it that way, Mark, when it was going on?
Yeah, I think so. We did something similar. We tried to, get together virtually. First it started with doing some live stuff online just to connect with fans, and we would, talk to some of our friends, and then we tried some virtual writing sessions that were, sort of hit or miss, but tried that. And I do think it made us stronger. You know, each of us went through something really, really difficult on top of COVID during this time. So that, you know, that kind of made some more, you know, speed bumps along the way. But I think the combination of all of that and creating that personal record, I agree. I think it did make us stronger on the other side.
And I don't know if you guys feel this way, but one of the things when everything opened back up again that I sort of miss because, it sucked that we couldn't do stuff. But because people couldn't get up and dance or move around or whatever the heck they were doing at a show, they had to pay attention more. So when you're
Right.
doing a show, I felt like you had to be on all the time because everybody's got their little phone, they're taking video, and oftentimes it's posted before you even end a song. But people are a lot more observant. People are a lot more taking it in, and I find it a little bit they're almost back to I don't want to say taking music for granted, but they're kind of back to this laissez-faire kind of attitude sometimes with music. Do you guys find that, or are you seeing that?
Yeah, well, the first thing I noticed, I play in some other bands and stuff too. I noticed that people were really wanted to get out.
Yep.
Places I was playing that were normally half full were packed, and I was like, "Oh, okay." People were having a great time, a little more reckless abandon for a bit, which is fun to be, to be around. But I agree with you, but it depends on. I found that sort of it depends on the venue that you're playing in, the type of band you're in, because some places are still people are still kind of maybe there's like a hangover from the COVID years,
Right.
you know what I mean? And they're still sort of like appreciative of the fact that wow, we can actually go out and have fun. And it's not every place, but I have noticed that even still there's a little bit of a lingering effect over.
Because I used to liken it when things first started to when you used to see like Elvis Presley clips of him playing in Vegas, and there people are sitting down smoking their cigarettes, golf clapping, but they're watching, and it was just like it was just to me it was just so intimate and cool because people couldn't get up; they were forced to either watch a band or leave,
Right.
and I thought one band in particular that I have really we were able to really connect with an audience and gain an audience because of the work that we put in when all that was going on. And I've been out to see other bands since, and it just seems like there might be a little bit of a taking for granted thing going on with some people. And I was
Yeah.
just wondering if maybe you guys are seeing that.
Yeah, I think John said it depends on the venue, it depends on the music too. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, John. Like there is a little bit of that. Like I wouldn't say it's 100% back. I mean, it's definitely better, no doubt about it. Like the
Yeah.
first couple times that you play, like I remember for me, I don't know if you guys felt this way when like the first being out of it for so long. When I actually went to do shows, I was like, it almost was like being out of the routine. It was like, this is weird, like I've been, and what's good? What can I do? What can I not do? Can I do this? And now that once you got through that, now it's like, okay, now I can get back and I can just play. But I think that people did, like John said, I think people were just itching to get back out. It was good for us to get back out and play too. So hopefully that's, as we continue to get further away, that's more like we're used to.
And I agree with you there because like one of the first shows that I did, I was like not arguing but having a debate with the sound man, but I can't hear and I didn't have my IEMs in.
Mm.
And it was just like something that you always did, and I was more concerned about getting gear set up and whatever. So but so in terms of this album, is it out? It's coming out?
It'll be out.
Yep.
I think I don't know if we have an exact date yet, but we're looking in
Okay.
the early spring.
Okay, so perfect. And you're already, I guess, making your plans to tour, what you're going to be doing, because it's a great time, right? Spring, the weather gets nicer pretty much everywhere. What are your plans for that end of things?
Well, this is sort of we're kind of approaching this a little differently. We have an opportunity here. We just released our first single called Best Is Yet to Come. And typically in the past, we'd released a single or a whole album, and then we're like, all right, let's go play. And we book a bunch of places, we get some opening slots like we talked about in the beginning. And but the thing is that there was no other way to do it prior to a few years ago. it's kind of that it was sort of felt like the spray and pray kind of approach. It was like, oh, let's just go play everywhere. Here we go.
Yeah.
Let's whatever we can take. But what's nice, here's the flip side of the modern. We were talking about modern technology versus old. The beautiful side of how things are now is that, for instance, we released Best Is Yet to Come everywhere. You can hear it on, let's say, Spotify or something. So we can go in on Spotify and go, okay, wow, we've gotten 1,000 spins from, oh, here's a city, a town, here's a country that we had no idea that they like. So our plan is, a long-winded way of saying our plan is we're going to release these couple singles. Then we're going to announce what the actual, when the album is actually out after that. And we're going to hold off a hair to see where's the most demand. Where are people want to come see us? Where are the bands in town app? Where are people saying, yeah, notify me when they come into town? That way we can target these things in a lot more logical way than we ever did before. Unlike other times, we're kind of not going 100% all in on the finalized plan 6 months from now. We're kind of doing it piece by piece.
So I definitely hear what you're saying there. I would never consider myself a numbers guy. I froze up there. I apologize. And I started doing some work with a record label up here in Canada that the president is a total analytics guy. Total analytics. And so I was kind of, but then I started getting into them. So to your point, I can see all my YouTubes. I can see things like, what age are the people? Where are they from? One of the things that I noticed today that was really cool is that I was very heavy Canada versus the United States, and now it's almost 50-50. And where in the United States is that happening? So are you guys, you're digging deep into those analytics and trying to crunch those things to figure some of this stuff out? Is that where you're I guess alluding to?
Well, yeah, I think that's what we're trying. We like John said, this is the first time we've had the opportunity to do that. So I think we're gonna, we've done it the other way, and there's absolutely something to be said for that. And like we talk about balance, there's analytics and there's eye test, and there's I think eventually we will. It's not like I think we're only gonna pinpoint specific things. I think we'll also, pick up some stuff as well. But I think we're really gonna make a concerted effort and at least use that as like a guideline to our planning rather than just blindly, like, when we were younger, just blindly just go anywhere, without any kind of thought behind it.
Well, and I think, there's still some parts of technology that I'm not necessarily sold on. Like, some points of AI are cool, but, for me, there's still some things out there that I'm not totally embracing. But I think this piece, when you can get the nitty gritty of, they're literally telling you, this 45-year-old man is sitting in Cleveland, Ohio at 6:00 in the evening eating, Cheerios and listening to your tune. I mean, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not that much. I mean, you can really start to do some pretty cool damage with some of this information.
The other thing, actually, I'm sorry, John. Like John and I actually were just talking about this earlier today. Not only do you see where some of these people are, but now there's a way to see, like, it's not just, you realize that your music appeals to people in non-musical ways too, and they have other characteristics that might lead them to like your music, and that we didn't really have that information available to us that long ago. So that's something else we can use as a tool as well.
Yeah, and like, for instance, we had no idea that people who play NASCAR games would enjoy our music. That's not necessarily where we thought that we'd go. But when it got picked up for the NASCAR game, we have consistent plays, speaking of analytics, consistent plays from playlists that have NASCAR heat songs on them. And our song keeps getting played every month. And it's like, wow, and so a bunch of people have bought from our Bandcamp page, they've bought our song "The Architect" that was on there, and it's really cool to we would have identified that in the past. We never would have said, oh yeah, NASCAR fans, that's our people who like us, So the beautiful part is that we can now start to see what the correlations are No, well, that's the hope anyway. And we can then serve these people well. We're not, if it's like if there's a concentration of them in Paris, well, let's go play Paris.
Right.
Like we wouldn't have probably gone through Paris. So that's sort of what's on our minds. Doing it smart this time. We're trying.
Well, and it's a great point because people talk about working hard, and very few people talk about working smart. And working smart is going to be the right way every time. I mean, hard work is great,
Yeah.
but how many times have you seen somebody bash their head against the wall 50 times when there's some guy over there figuring out the analytics and getting it right the second or third time, right?
You got it.
Right. So we gotta be mindful of that. So all this aside, you've been gathering this information. You think that the album is coming? Well, you said probably March. What might a tour for you guys look like? Are you, because a lot of people I talk to, they don't go out 2 or 3 months at a time. They do the weekend stuff, or they're doing different sorts of things. Have you guys thought that far ahead yet?
No, we haven't gotten that far ahead yet. Yeah, it would be more in more collective spurts, but yeah, we haven't gotten that far ahead yet. So I'm not 100% sure.
That's
Um,
one of the
sorry.
things where we're not 23 anymore.
Yeah.
We all have families, we have other lives and obligations. So how to balance all that is the tricky part. So what we've let me try that again. Preliminarily, there we go. Thought of was, we would do sort of smaller amount of time more often. And then in the summer or in the fall, we'll do some maybe extended things. We'd love to make it to Europe this time. We want to come up to Canada for sure. We will probably hit the East Coast here in the US hard because that's where we've typically drawn people before. And then hopefully also get those festivals that we were sort of cranking on right before the pandemic.
Have you been to Europe before?
No, not playing. So we'd love to.
So I was over there in August. I did a wedding, of all things. I played at a wedding, and it was in Dublin. So I spent 5 extra days, and I visited Phil Lynotte's grave and his house and all this stuff.
Wow.
My takeaway over there is it is one of the best places for music you're ever going to find because there's so many different types. There seems to be fan bases for all the different types that are there. The travel's amazing because it's not super broad. Like if you guys come to Canada, you go to Montreal and your next stop after Montreal might be a 12 or 13 hour drive. We're so vast and spread out.
Yeah.
Not the case over there. It's just perfectly set up to be a touring musician. So I think you guys would really enjoy it over there.
Yeah, we've had some really interesting. I mean, we've sold a bunch of things to people in Europe who will even go as far as like, oh, well, it's going to be really expensive for us to ship our discs over there because we don't have distribution in Europe yet. And they're like, that's fine. It's like, it's double the price of what we normally sell here. They're like, that's fine. It's like, oh, okay. Like they really seems like they really love to support us, and bands who are trying to push forward. And it's a really cool feeling, spending their hard-earned money on an insane amount of shipping, so it's cool.
They still have a live music vibe over there. It's at one point, we were walking the streets and I was like, there's a lot of walking streets in Dublin with no vehicles on them. And I'm standing in the middle of the street and all four corners, there's bars with all kinds of different music.
Oh, yeah.
10 in the morning, packed on a Tuesday, right? They just love their music over there. So, okay. So we got to get ready to wrap here, but you mentioned where my viewers can find you. So John, maybe once again, give the rundown of where my folks can find all your 3 albums and then the new one when it's going to be out.
Sure. Well, you can go to our Bandcamp page. Just search Mile Marker Zero. It might even be Bandcamp/Mile Marker Zero. Is that right, Mark?
It's a MMZ official.
MMZ official.
Bandcamp.
Okay, it's Bandcamp/MMZ official for those of you who like to purchase high quality files and stuff. That's a great place. You can find us on Instagram at MMZ official. On Facebook is Mile Marker Zero. We're even doing the TikTok that we started working on. We're trying to be all over the place. And milemarkerzero.com. Those are all great places to find us.
And do you guys have a YouTube channel, by the way?
We do.
Yes.
I'm going to go.
Also MMZ official, right?
I will subscribe to that when we're done. Because one of the things that I find about YouTube, it can be a painful process. A friend of mine who wasn't subscribed to my channel sent me, it was a video of some girl burping the alphabet with her dog that was 5 minutes long. It's like, you can't take 20 seconds to subscribe to my channel. Like, come on. Right. So I will definitely subscribe to your channel or us.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Sean.
So gentlemen, I want to thank you for doing this. Very nice to meet you. As I always say to my guests, and Jamie would know, I'd like to stay in touch and see how you guys make out, because we're in the kind of the a little bit of the doldrums of winter, but before we know it, it's going to be nice, and you guys will probably be back at it out in the road. So thanks a lot for doing this, my friends.
Thank you so much.
Peace out.